Hello, everyone. In this podcast, in the next series of podcasts, we're going to talk about smoothing weights. Now, this is the process of refining your weights, moving on from the blocked out weight process. And this can be a very time consuming process. So this first one, we're just going to go over just the base theory. And then in the next set of podcasts, we're going to have where they're going to be a little bit longer sessions. So normally I keep a very traditional 7 to 10 minute type of podcast. This one will be in that case, but the ones in the future may be a little bit longer, just so you can see me in the process of weighting, because it's like watching someone paint at that point. Okay, so we're going to go into our character, and we're going to start by weighting the toes down here. Now, typically when I'm weighting, I will start at a certain region, go from the toe and go all the way up through the leg, go from the fingers, go all the way up to the arms. I go outside in. We want to be very procedural with this. We don't want to be jumping around place to place, because when you're smoothing weights, it's going to break certain things. Things are going to spit weights around. We're going to have some we're going to have some weird issues. And if you're not really on top of your process, that can cause problems. Some people like to go from the torso and come out. I don't like to do that, because I like to mirror my weights after I do my limbs. And I figure if I do my body and spend all my time on my body, that the mirroring weights might mess that up. And I don't want to have to redo that after the fact. So we're going to go with our toe and start here. Now, the first process is that we're going to add some weight to the top. And the reason is because if we are actually smoothing, it needs to have something to pull from. And we want it to pull from something that we've told it to pull from. So in that case, so I'm going to do, that's fine, add, and I'm going to add a 0.1 on here. So it's 10%. And I'm just going to add some influences going up here. Let me go into my character and focus on that. Okay. I'll go down here. I'm just giving something that I can smooth to. And I'm going to do the same thing for my ankle joint coming down. I'm going to add some influence. I'm going to add a little bit more. Now that is going to bother me, but we'll clean that off as we go through. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to move our joint into a position. We call this wiggle and weight. So we can see how we're getting this weird type of jagged effect here and like that. So let's say I wanted it to be like that. Now, typically, that's fine. That's okay, because I don't want verts overlapping each other. Now, what I want to do is, now this is kind of getting into an extreme territory. We don't want to do something like that where we can't see our edges. So in this case, we can actually edge loop both. We can paint both areas, the top and the bottom, and get a decent weight. And it looks pretty chunky right now. So I'm going to select my geometry and go into paint skin weights. And if I want to move this down, and I do, this shouldn't have any influence here. This is going to be pretty rigid. This is where our influence should be. So that's where it should be bending. So I need to move all this influence down. So I'm going to go into add, and I'm going to, on the ankle, I'm just going to paint over on this area to kind of force it to go through. And you can be really careful when you're doing this that you're not accidentally painting on a different area. It will happen all the time, especially when we're smoothing. So now I'm going to paint here, and you see how it's starting to move that ridge down. Now, we're not always going to get perfect edge loops when we're doing this. Let's make sure we get that off. And right now it's looking pretty awful at this point. But now, that's going to be dangerous what I'm doing now, because I blocked out some weights here that I want to smooth. I'm going to start smoothing. So I'm going to smooth, and when smooth does is it actually averages out those verts. So add will move the edge loops up, smooth will clean them. It'll make them organized. And the dangerous why I say you normally don't want to weight areas that have absolutely no weighting is because it doesn't necessarily have something to reference to. So it can actually fly to the wrong area. Make sure that you're getting out of this mode and unselecting to see what it looks like. Because sometimes you get so locked into your paint weights mode that you forget what you're actually looking at. So right here, this edge is a little too tight, and I need to bring it back to this guy here. So you see how it's just completely 100%. So I go into add, and maybe I'll do a smaller more opaque brush, and I'll just kind of paint right across like that. I probably can do another attack on that. Of course, that was too much. It always is. This is why let me go in here. I'm going to put, nope, that's way too much. So this is why I use the Wacom tablet when I'm painting, because the mouse is very imprecise. Okay, so now we're going to smooth. So you can smooth and add little amounts of weight to the area above what you're initially intending to make a fake skin pulling. And you see a little guy right there, a little rogue weight there. And that wasn't from this process, that was there beforehand. Okay. Careful, be very, very careful that you're not smoothing on an area. Okay, so it's going through. Sometimes smoothing does not move the character. I saw that smooth down. I didn't want to go that point. I did want this to happen. Is you need to jump back and forth between the two influences. You need to move the geometry, to have it stressed. So I can go in and I can rotate it down like that. And I can say, I want some pulling happening right here. I also see, it looks like a vert is kind of moving down here. And it's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to go to my wireframe, which is going to cause problems in another area in a second. Okay. So I can ask myself, do I want this to be sharper, or do I want this to be more of a bend? So if this is more of a tube, I'd do more of a bend, but actually I think I want to make this a little sharper down here. So I'll go in my add, I'll go even to a smaller brush, and I'll start adding on here. You see I'm just moving the edge loops around. It's going to sound like a broken record here, but when I'm in the Wacom tablet, I just got a lot more control of how I'm doing that. One thing I can do, if I turn my wireframe unshaded off, and then I go into my, I can turn my wireframe off. I can also turn my color feedback off, and I can see what it looks like on the bend. Now that's a pretty extreme bend. Your foot really can't do that. So I'm just kind of going through a range of motion and seeing if I'm happy with that. Okay, let's say I'm happy with that. Now what I need to do is I'm going to leave it in a stress position, and let's see if I move my other joint if I get this issue. Do you see how there's like a vert moving there? Like that? And I think this happened from originally when I blocked out, I might have missed an area. But we got this one vert that's kind of really misbehaving on here. So let's see what's going on with that. If I go into my paint weights mode and I go into my paint selected, I can just select this area right here and go into my component editor. I can also see that that's actually being much sharper on here all the way across here too. All this is really sharp for some reason when I move my foot. And the reason for this is because if I go back into my paint mode and I go into my hip, you'll see some weighting down here. See? Like, where did those guys come from? And that's a very, very good question. So I go to my paint selection on here, and I'm going to my component editor. You can see there's a hip. So I'm just going to zero that out. I want to show you this. Like that. I can just select these guys, make my hip go away. Now I can see from here that it's only on these two leg joints now, and I'm completely okay with that. Okay, so the hips need to go away. I just shift select and zero those out. Still a couple little guys there. I remember that guy over there being there too. I probably would have like removed him from the equation too. But I think that was actually on the leg, not on there. Okay. And you see, like, all of a sudden, it doesn't look as bad. It looked really, really bad when I moved it to the side. And that's because it had a weird influence coming from it. And like I said, I could see that one or two of those verts I might have missed when I was doing my blockout phase, but I definitely didn't miss that much. And that comes from the smoothing process. It likes to spit your weights around. Now, what I don't do, that case I did fix them. I went by and I removed them off of it. I made sure that it still looked good from this position. I kind of moved it up and down, and then I moved my influence. I did this type of thing and made sure I didn't get any weird motion. And then like, okay, then I'm good with that. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to keep on chasing these weights all the way through. If I see some weird weights above, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to paint through my whole my system, fix immediate issues, and then I'm going to wait until the end when I'm done with a limb, and then I'm going to go through and really get rid of any small and ugly weights because they're going to keep popping up. And I don't want you to keep on hammering away. It would feel like a daunting task at that point, and we don't want that. So that's pretty much the initial phase or at least the initial theory of smoothing our weights.